Yesterday, we were treated to a fantastic Super Bowl. Chiefs got it done 38-35 over the Philadelphia Eagles. So many takeaways from that game. Feel like the NFL offseason really gets underway now that the Super Bowl is in the rearview mirror. And we're going to see the quarterback position, as it always does, carry the offseason. And those dominoes falling first will really determine how things go for the remainder of the offseason. And we're starting to see some of these wheels turning, axles grinding a bit. Things are starting to set into motion. So we'll talk about those things. We'll talk extensively about Super Bowl 57 and some of the takeaways. There's some big takeaways, man. I mean, things just got a little complicated, especially in the NFC in particular. All of that and more here on the 315th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 315th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Wow, what a game we witnessed last night. And, I've said this before of all of the major sports, the NFL tends to deliver, and I get it. All of the other major sports in the United States, they play series to determine a champion. They don't do it in a one-game setting. So it's a little bit different. But you can have a dramatic series. I mean, I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2015, when LeBron beat the Warriors with the dramatic block in had to be game 7, right? That was game 7, right? On the road. Andre Iguodala going to lay it up and he glasses it, right? Like that was a dramatic game. Kyrie comes down, hits the game-winning jumper, essentially. I mean, yeah, that was pretty dramatic. But the NFL rarely misses in the Super Bowl. We've got a couple of duds. You're not going to hit a home run every single time, but there was a stretch there. There was like a 5-year stretch or so where they didn't miss. I think it might have started with the Packers and the Steelers. That was a good Super Bowl. The Rashard Mendenhall fumble that really altered that game. And then it went to the Steelers going back the next year and beating the Arizona Cardinals. Or is it vice versa? I think the Cardinals game came first. And they were looking to go back-to-back, and they lost to the Packers in that next year. I might have it. The Packers one might have come first. Either way, those were two really good games. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Saints Super Bowl was after that. That one wasn't that great. That was like it was a mid Super Bowl. But then I think you got the Seahawks destroying the Broncos. That was terrible, obviously. But then you got the Patriots and the Seahawks. That was epic. The next year, I think, was the Cam Newton Denver Broncos Super Bowl, which was a really good game. It wasn't a lot of points scored, but it came down to the final possession or so. Then you got the comeback in the Atlanta Falcons 28-3 comeback Super Bowl. Then that was followed by the Eagles and the Patriots having a shootout. Then I think the Patriots win again, and they beat the Rams, if I'm not mistaken. That was 10-3 or something, 13-3, something like that. Yeah. But I said all that to say this. Usually we get good games in the Super Bowl. we've had, every now and again you get a stinker. Last year's Super Bowl was good. It was a good game. It was Rams and the Bengals, and that came down to the final possession. So the league usually gets this right. This was probably the most entertaining, though. We haven't had a 30, plus performance from both teams in a shootout type of game probably since that Patriots-Eagles Super Bowl back in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think we've seen two teams hit the 30s and battle it out like we saw last night. So that was a fantastic game. A lot of people were not happy with the way it ended. We're going to talk about that, all of that, and then some. We're going to get to all of that today on the show, and I want to hear from you guys as well. Anyway, I want to start the show off though. First of all, let me ask y'all a question. I've been meaning to ask y'all this question for the last week, and because I didn't do a pod last week, I didn't get to ask you the question, and I was like, I'm gonna forget. I know I'm gonna forget, and it just hit my mind, so I'm gonna ask you right now before I forget. This is non sequitur. I'm going off topic for a second. Has nothing to do with nothing. I'm just curious. How do you like your water? You're going to drink water. You're drinking a bottle of water. How do you like your water? Room temperature? Cold, but not cold as hell? Cold as hell. Okay, those are your three options. Room temperature, so you don't really, you'd rather have it in the pantry, on the floor. You just go in, grab one, and you guzzle it. Cold, that means you put it in the fridge, right? Gets a little cold, but it's not like it goes down and you're getting a brain freeze. It's cold. And then cold as hell, where you got to, it takes your breath. It's so cold. And you got to take a break after a long sip because it's a little cold, right? How do you like your water? I've had debates with people on this. I know the effects of, drinking room temperature water versus drinking ridiculously cold water. I know how it works. Still, I have a preference. I want to know what's yours. Anyway, let's jump into the gem dropping session. I'll let those comments start to, accumulate, and we'll get to those in the second. Excuse me. Get to that in the second segment of the show when we get to social media maneuvers. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, LouieTeeNetwork. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, the offseason now can officially begin. Now, it won't technically begin until the start of the new league year in March, right around that March 13th, March 12th range, whenever it is this year. But you're going to see some transactions taking place. You're going to see things starting to happen. And to me, the quarterback position trumps everything. It's cool to go out and sign a high-priced wide receiver. It's great to go get you a big-time pass rusher. It's awesome if you can go score you a nice linebacker or safety or tight end. That's great, man. Fine and dandy. Go get you a left tackle if you can find one in free agency. And do whatever floats your boat, right? Nothing moves the needle quite like finding the right guy at the quarterback position. We're going to talk about that extensively today because the Eagles, I think it's safe to say they found their guy at the quarterback position. That said, we've seen the last three off seasons really be shaped by the quarterback position and movement at the most important position in the sport. 3 years ago, Brady moved to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It resulted in a Super Bowl that year. 2 years ago, Matthew Stafford changed teams. It resulted in a Super Bowl win for the Rams. Last year, Russell Wilson changed teams. I thought that was going to continue the trend of a big-name quarterback, a future Hall of Fame quarterback, moving teams and having that swing the balance of power to that team and have them ultimately hoist the Lombardi. Clearly that did not take place in 2022. However, we're going to see teams continue to take a swing for the fences by going out and getting a quarterback that they think can come in and change the fortunes of their organization and franchise. Two big names are out there this year. None bigger than Aaron Rodgers. I was adamant that he nor Tom Brady would retire. Brady has since retired. I do not think Aaron Rodgers is going to do the same thing. And so now the question becomes, where's Aaron Rodgers going to end up? And I think that probably is something that I would say happens first, if not for Derek Carr being released, and it looks like that's going to happen. And he's the other big domino. Now, there's still Jimmy Garoppolo out there, and there may be one or two other guys that end up surfacing before this is all said and done. But, the big two guys that I think teams are looking at and saying, hey, if we add this guy, we may have a chance, is Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr. And so I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a distant third. And then anybody else that checks in, unless there's a guy that we just aren't thinking about right now that ends up surfacing, that ends up getting moved, that we didn't think was going to be moved. Unless that happens, I think it's pretty safe to say that that's going to be the real movement that has a chance to potentially move the needle for teams that are looking to add a veteran quarterback. Rodgers has said he's going to go into a retreat. And when he resurfaces from this retreat, this is supposed to be some sort of blackout darkness retreat where he's going to disconnect himself from social media and electricity and just get away, and when he resurfaces, he'll have an idea of if he still wants to play football and where he would like to play. I don't think I really need the retreat. I'm not Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think I need the retreat to know that he's going to want to play when he's done with all of this, when his body feels better. And he's already made the statement that he still thinks he can play at an MVP level. We've already seen the Devontae Adams post. I think his preference is probably the Vegas Raiders. Go connect with his guy, and they've got talent out there. And you add Aaron Rodgers to that team. I don't know defensively if they've got enough, but if that offense holds up, if guys stay healthy, if Hunter Renfrow is healthy, if Darren Waller's healthy, if Devontae Adams is healthy, I don't see any reason why they can't be a dangerous team in the AFC. That said, they're not the only team interested in Aaron Rodgers. The Jets formally inquired about Aaron Rodgers' availability. They hit the Packers up, and the Packers said, yeah, we'll get back to you on that, but just know this isn't like last year or the year before where we were pretty much telling everybody hell no and slamming the phone down. Think we're going to actually trade him and move him this year. Just give us a couple of weeks. Let Aaron clear his head. We'll talk to him again, then hit us back. Or you know what? We'll call you back. All right. So the Jets are definitely interested. I told you about a month ago, Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, came out and said, we're a veteran quarterback away. He believes that, honestly. And in him saying that tells you all you need to know about the future of Zach Wilson in New York. We've heard Zach Wilson be mentioned, that there was a statement made by Robert Saleh where they said that they're going to stick by Zach Wilson come hell or high water. Okay. So you say. They're done with him. They feel like they've made a mistake. I don't think he's the most mature guy in the world, that's one of the biggest things that you have to on the field, talent-wise, that has to be there. You can be the nicest guy in the world, but if you suck, nobody cares, right? But if you have the talent, then maturity is one of the biggest things that you have to have, because I think I've seen more guys come into this league immature with the utmost talent, But because they thought their shit didn't stink, because no one had ever told them no along their journey, because they were always the best among the group of players they were playing with or against, they have this fallacy in their mind that they don't have to work as hard because it always came natural to them and they were always the best. And eventually you get to a level where everybody's good. And if you're not putting in the work necessary to separate yourself, you'll get left behind. And then some guys just don't get it. Like, they don't understand that, hey, man, this shit is for real. Like, these guys are out here hunting and you got to turn it up. And I think Zach Wilson's one of those dudes that he doesn't get it. And sometimes I worry about guys from these smaller schools with these local medias like, BYU quarterbacks and, North Dakota State quarterback, because you're not dealing with a high level of scrutiny when you're playing at a school where the media isn't going to, gobble you up and spit you out for a backbreaking mistake or, whatever the case may be. These kids that go to these SEC schools or Big Ten or like these fan bases live or die with every single game. And if you make a mistake, it's almost like you're a pro already. You have to carry yourself in that manner. I don't know if you get that necessarily with some of these smaller school program kids, but that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is the Jets have moved on mentally from Zach Wilson. They're going to get themselves a veteran this offseason. I think it starts with Aaron Rodgers. If they can't get him, they move then to Derek Carr. And if they can't get him, I think they go to Jimmy Garoppolo. But they're going to try to upgrade that position with a veteran signal caller that has been there, done that. Now, Carr doesn't necessarily have the playoff experience, but Rodgers and Garoppolo do. And so they're looking for a guy that can stabilize that position, upgrade what they have, and they've got a ton of talent. I don't know if people realize this, but NFL had just had their NFL awards show last week. I think it was the Thursday before the Super Bowl. And the Jets had both the offensive and defensive rookie of the year on their team. Like, they're a talented group in New York, which is why Woody Johnson feels so strongly about the prospects of the Jets if they can just find a quarterback that can put them over the top. I'm not sure that they're that high in the pantheon of teams in the AFC. I still think they're at best the third best team in their division, and they still don't know how to beat the Patriots for whatever reason. But I think they can be better than the Patriots, but they're not better than the Dolphins or the Bills right now in their own division. They're not better than Kansas City. They're probably not better than the Chargers. Raiders to be determined, right? That's TBD, depending on what happens at the quarterback position. But we can go through all the teams in that conference, and you'd go a long way down the list before you got to the Jets. Even though, they were this close to making it to the playoffs, you go a long way down the list before you get to the Jets. But, you get the right quarterback in there, and it could change some things. They've got some talent. And then there's Derek Carr, the good old Ford Carr, who just told the Raiders, I'm not waiving my no-trade clause, not helping you out in any capacity. He's pissed. Derek Carr is pissed. He is a quarterback scorned right now. He was at the Pro Bowl talking cold, hard cash about the Raiders, and he's not looking to help them in any way, shape, or form. He's not trying to help them facilitate a trade. He's like, let me go. Either you pick up this massive amount of money that you have to pay me under this contract by having me on the roster, the third week into February, or you cut me. I'm not waiving any trade clauses. I'm not doing anything to acquiesce, to help you. You made this bed, now you lay in it. Okay? So they're going to have to release Derek Carr here shortly. And the assumption was they're gonna make he's gonna make a beeline to New Orleans to, I want to say, reunite with Dennis Allen. I'm not sure if those two crossed paths or not in Vegas or / Oakland. It was Oakland then. Not sure if those two crossed paths or not. Feel like they did, but I'm not 100% sure. But the overwhelming feeling is that that's where he's going to end up, is in New Orleans. And the Raiders, I think, felt like they had an opportunity to strike a deal with the Saints. And Carr's like, wherever I'm going, I don't want them giving assets to you to make you better, taking things away from us that can make us better just because you want to be able to get something for me. Hell no, not helping you out at all. Let me go. It looks like the Raiders are kind of have their back against the wall. And when they decided to bench him and essentially told him, yeah, you can go home, you're no longer needed here, that's the environment that they created. So the likelihood is he's going to be a free agent, and I think he'll be the first domino to fall because Rodgers has to be traded. And, there can, always be little hiccups in trades potentially. You got to make everything work for both parties involved. Whereas Derek Carr is going to be a free agent. He'll get to choose his next destination. And his brother was very adamant that there were certain things that Derek Carr was going to be looking for in his next stop. Stable organization with ownership, head coach, all of that good jazz. And he was going to be looking for a team that has championship aspirations, and he would more likely than not be that missing piece. He's not looking to help a team rebuild anything. He's looking to go somewhere and win right away. And so we'll see what team fits that criteria. I still think it's New Orleans. The Jets, I think, are in that conversation, but I think it's New Orleans. And I think the Jets are going to be aggressive if they don't get to Rodgers. And I think Vegas, I don't know where Josh McDaniels' head is and what he's looking to do, but if he's interested in Aaron Rodgers, I think Rodgers is interested in Vegas. So I could see something getting done there because remember, Rodgers has total control over where he goes. He's got a no trade clause that he made sure that when he signed that extension, that 3-year, like $150 million extension, he pretty much set it up to where he controlled where he ended his career. It wasn't going to be in the hands of the Packers. He was going to determine and decide where his final snaps would be taken. So he'll have total autonomy in that situation when it comes to where he ends up if he's going to continue to play football in 2023 and moving forward. I could see it being Vegas for him and for Derek Carr. I think it's going to be New Orleans. If it's not New Orleans, it's the Jets. And then I think wherever those two guys don't end up, that's where Jimmy Garoppolo will end up. I've even heard, and you guys probably saw this as well, I think I saw that the Buccaneers were interested in Jimmy Garoppolo, as the Bucs aren't necessarily looking to rebuild, more like retool, but they understand that you're taking a massive step back with whomever you bring in at quarterback. He's not going to be Tom Brady. So I think they're in this mindset of, we're not looking to blow this thing up, but we also have realistic expectations where we're probably not going to be as good as we were the past few years with Brady. And thus, we want to have a guy in here that allows us to still compete at a high enough level that we're not just an afterthought in the NFC. Garoppolo gives you that, opportunity to compete if he's healthy. And so we'll see where he ends up. But I heard Tampa Bay is maybe interested in a Jimmy Garoppolo. And, Tampa Bay is interesting because they've got a ton of talent, as much talent as anybody on the offensive side of the football. But after watching them last year, I don't know if you can't get it done with Brady. I don't know if there's any quarterback that can come into that situation and lift that team to where they were just a mere 2 years ago. So anyway, I digress. 3 years ago now, I guess it is. Whatever the case may be, the quarterback wheels are starting to turn. And we're going to see some movement here shortly. And once that happens, it's going to reshape the conferences that these players go to. And it's going to reshape how we think about the offseason. And, all of a sudden, what this team may need to do or that team may need to do, or what this division looks like all of a sudden now. It didn't look like this before. So, I mean, the AFC West can't afford another juggernaut quarterback, can they? Like, you've already got Herbert, Mahomes, and Russell Wilson with now Sean Payton, which you'd like to think that's going to turn that offense into a much better unit. And we know they play defense out there. No matter who the defensive coordinator is, no matter who's calling, it seems like Denver just plays really good defense. So, excuse me. You can't afford to add another quarterback out there the stature of an Aaron Rodgers, can you? I mean, wow, that would be insane. But we'll see. I think the offseason has a lot to hold, lot in store for us. And it's just getting underway now that the Super Bowl is behind us. So let's get to the next segment of the show, and that's social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. I appreciate y'all for coming through and chopping it up with the kid. And so if you guys are veterans of the show, then y'all know how this goes. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it's pertinent, we'll get to it and we'll discuss. If you want to jump straight to the front of the line, Super Chats are the way to get that done. And so we'll get to as many comments as we can get to before we move on to the final segment of the show. I want to start off this segment by, talking about the Super Bowl, and then I'll go back, read some of the comments from the question that I asked at the top of the show, and then we'll get into any other hashtags or super chats that we may run into. So, Super Bowl 57 was everything I thought it was going to be and then some. I thought we were going to get a game in the mid to high 20s. I did not think it would escalate into the 30s. I said this in my prediction for the game, and I predicted the Eagles would win, so I was wrong. And I couldn't be more happy to be wrong. Honestly, I did not want the Eagles to win, but I thought they were going to win the game because I thought they could run the football. And I was pleasantly surprised at how Kansas City was able to neutralize the Eagles' rushing attack, sans for Jalen Hurts. The running backs in that game were absolutely shut down. They cut that faucet off. The first snap of the game set the tone when Miles Sanders had nowhere to go, tried to bounce it outside, took a wallop and fumbled the ball backwards 2 yards, and it ended up being second and 12. And that kind of set the tone for what the day would be for the running backs. Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, and Miles Sanders were all non-factors in the game as rushers, but Hurts was the guy that they had absolutely zero answer for. On the ground, throwing the football, as a playmaker, Hurts did it all. We'll talk more about him and what this game has done for his stock. But I thought this was a game that was going to be played, and the Eagles looked like they were well on their way to doing that in the first 3 quarters, because the first half stands for the Jalen Hurts fumble. They dominated time possession. We talked about this all yesterday during the game, after the game. They dominated time possession in the first half, 22-8, right? Like 22 minutes to 8 in the first half. They had 40 plays to the Chiefs, like 22 plays in the first half. They had 276 yards to like the Chiefs 141. Like, they dominated. The Chiefs were 0 of 3 on third downs. The Eagles were 6 of 10 and 1 of 1 on fourth down. Like, they dominated the first half of that game every way imaginable. And they were only up 10. And it could have been worse because Harrison Butker missed a field goal. Could have easily been 7. But they were up 10. Mahomes had just re-aggravated the ankle injury, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, if they don't do something on this opening possession of the second half, they're in trouble. And Andy Reid, Peter King had a very candid sit down with Andy Reid, and it's rare you get this kind of access with a coach who just won a Super Bowl. You're celebrating, you're getting lost in the moment. It's rare that a member of the media is able to pull you aside, get you to sit in some side room and, chop it up with him for 10 to 15 minutes, which is what Peter King was able to do, which Peter King's one of those dudes. When it comes to being plugged into the NFL, he is him, right? I don't love Peter King, but Peter King has access that, few can get in the league. And he was able to sit down with Andy Reid like literally 30 minutes after the game was over, pull him into the office and chop it up with Andy Reid. And he asked Andy about a number of different things. The first thing he was curious about was, what did you say at halftime? And Andy's like, first of all, I just told them to calm down. Like, we're not playing the kind of football that we know we're capable of. We're only down 10. That's nothing. And when I heard him say that, I paused the video. It was a 5 minute and 5 minute and 50-second video. And I paused the video and I sat back in my chair. And I thought to myself, it's only 10. He said, that's nothing. It's just 10 points, guys. We can do that like that. And I paused it. And I thought to myself, damn, that must be nice. My favorite team, if we're down 10, it might take us 3 quarters to erase the 10-point deficit. We struggle, man. And this guy's talking about 10 points is nothing. It's a drop in the hat. We're good. He said we're just a fraction of a second off on both sides of the ball. We're fine. 10 points is nothing. Just relax, guys. And he said, and it's funny, I was talking to Boss Man. For those of you who don't know, Boss Man is my dad. And he said, the halftime show and the length of how long halftime is, it makes a difference. And when he told me that, sometimes my dad says shit and I just like, oh, okay, yeah. And I just say, yeah, just to shut him up so we can move on to something else. But I'm not buying what you're selling. But yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, whatever. That was one of those statements when he's talking about the length of halftime. I'm like, okay, dude, whatever. But Andy Reid said halftime being a little bit longer at the Super Bowl gave our players a chance to hit the reset button. If we didn't have 30 minutes, if we just had 15 minutes like we normally do, maybe we aren't able to bounce back mentally the way that we were in the second half, where we were unstoppable on offense and we made just enough plays on defense. And we contributed with a little bit of special teams flavor as well. But the 30 minutes gave us a chance to really hit the reset button, recharge the battery. It gave Patrick a chance to have his ankle settle down, and we were able to go out and do what we ultimately did. Wow. Okay. So Boss Man was right again. He's been pretty good at this thing all year long, including winning winners and losers. And anyway, Andy Reid went on to talk about the adjustments that they made. And one of the things they talked about was those red zone touchdowns, both of the easy walk-in touchdowns and the motion. And did they see something in the Eagles defensively? Or, did they know they were going to get these matchups? Did they know they could confuse them? And he went through those plays, like sat down. There's a whiteboard that, Peter King has in his hand, and he's got it diagrammed with the play, and he's going through the play. And he one of the plays was called Corn Dog, the one that they did to Kadarius Toney was called Corn Dog. Coincidentally enough, and Andy's like, there's nothing better than a corn dog with a little bit of mustard and ketchup. Andy is he's a fat man at heart. Like, he's a big dude, but he's fat. It's a difference. Like, Andy's always talking about food, man. Cheeseburgers, corn dogs, you name it. Andy's like, yo, let me get some of that. Andy isn't shy about letting you know, I like to eat, man. Stop playing with me when we going to eat. So they called this play corn dog. And, Peter King is like so excited about the name. Like he's kind of like thrown off by like, seriously, it's corn dog. If he goes in the huddle and says corn dog, everybody knows what the play is. He's like, yeah, pretty much. But they knew that because they had run jet motion in the regular season and had so much success with it, they knew the Eagles were keying in on it and that they would overplay any motion, because the Chiefs have been a team, they've run a lot of shovel passes down in the red zone. Against the 49ers, they had 2 jet sweep motion plays that went for touchdowns to Mecole Hardman, and Kadarius Toney has filled that void that Mecole Hardman has kind of left with his injury. And they're also notorious for sending a guy in short motion and then throwing that guy a quick screen, blocking, and having him get into the end zone. And so they knew that this stuff was on film. Like, this is the genius of Andy Reid, right? They knew that these things are out there for the masses to consume. They know the Eagles are watching this and they're thinking to themselves, hey, when we get in the red zone, be on the lookout for these things. Bolo, be on the lookout for these types of, formations and these types of switches, because they're going to try to catch us napping. We got to be ready. And they overplayed it. And they used that aggression. And I thought they were great all night long. Oh, all night long, all night, all night long, all night. I thought all night long they were good at using Philadelphia's aggressiveness against them. They used a lot of counters, a lot of plays that went against what the action looked like. And in that play in particular, the Kadarius Toney, he comes in motion. The first touchdown of the game for the Chiefs, they send, I think it was Juju Smith-Schuster in motion, and that forced the Eagles to give Kelsey one-on-one with Marcus Epps instead of Darius Slay. Like, they knew what they wanted to do, and they used motion to do it. But that play, that corn dog play, was a run pass option. Like, it was initially a run call, and based off of the Eagles' alignment and scheme, whether it's man or zone, they were going to then either throw it or run it. And once Mahomes saw that it was man coverage, when he sent Kadarius Toney in motion and that corner drifted with him, he knew he had man, and that's the look they wanted. And there was all types of confusion because they created this, the same thing they did on the touchdown. They created confusion with stack formations, and you send a guy in short motion and you've already got Kelsey in the slot and your receiver stops right behind Travis Kelsey. It creates a little bit of confusion. Darius Slay went too far in. Kelsey just runs up the field. 2 defenders get trapped there, and Kadarius Toney essentially backpedals back out into the flats, and there's no one there. They ran a similar play, but Andy Reid was very adamant in saying that play was different. Now, it looked the same because you still got a little short motion from Sky Moore, but the difference in that play is that was a called pass. There was no run pass option there. That was a called pass. They just ran the motion, and they got the same look. They got the same man-to-man coverage. You have the receiver coming in short motion and then, stopping on a dime and getting back out to the flats, and the Eagles simply overplayed it once again. 2 guys go inside. No one goes with Sky Moore, and he walks into the end zone. It was beautifully executed. And, again, it's just the genius of Andy Reid using the Eagles' aggressiveness against them. It was amazing to watch the Chiefs operate in the second half. From what they were in the first half, which was a shell of themselves, couldn't get defensive stops. When they did get the football on offense, you had the 1 touchdown on the opening possession, but then you had the second possession end in a field goal that was missed, and then you had a punt on the 3rd possession. And so they didn't have it often, but they didn't make the most of the opportunities that they did have. They were 0 of 3 on 3rd downs. Keep that in mind. Like, we can sit here and talk about Philadelphia dominating the football, but if Kansas City isn't 0 of 3, the Eagles don't have 22 minutes of time of possession. Like, They were thoroughly being dominated in the game. And then the second half happened. And Mahomes was fantastic. The run game, I thought, was outstanding all night. And I said that the Eagles, you can run on them. You can run on the Philadelphia Eagles. They've been fortunate, have the Eagles, that they've been up big in these games. They haven't had anybody really test them. I thought Christian McCaffrey ran the football very effectively against them, especially for a guy that you knew they didn't have any quarterbacks. Once Brock Purdy got hurt on like the first possession of the game, you knew there was nothing. You weren't afraid of Josh Johnson. They had to run the football, and he was getting chunks. And the sad part about it was his average, and when you look at his numbers at the end of the game, probably weren't reflective of what he had done, because they were able to load up the box and stop him, because they didn't have they literally, at one point when Josh Johnson went down, they literally didn't have a quarterback. Brock Purdy came in and they knew he couldn't throw the football. So I felt like you could run on Philadelphia, and the Chiefs did. So much was made of the pass interference, the holding call on that final possession, on that third down, that was huge because it allowed the Chiefs to essentially run it down to 8 seconds and kick that field goal, or rather, I think it was 11 seconds, and then kick that walk-off field goal, essentially. And I was adamant. I said, look, would you prefer them to not call that? Absolutely. Is that a foul? Yes, it is. And I didn't necessarily catch flack for it, but a lot of people disagreed with me. They didn't think that was a good call. I heard that was a BS call. The officials cost us the game. Well, the guy that the call was made on, the guy that had the infraction, James Bradbury, the fourth, after the game said, that's a flag. I got caught, essentially. He said, I held him, and I was hoping they wouldn't call it. He had gotten away with it earlier in the game. I said this last night. I'm like, look, would I have preferred them not call it there? Sure. I would have had no problems if they didn't throw the flag there. None whatsoever. But I didn't have a problem with them throwing the flag either, because it was a foul. His contact significantly impacted that play. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But people didn't want to hear that, because this was such a dramatic game. It's tied at 35. You don't want to see it ended in that manner. But at the end of the day, it was a foul. A foul's a foul's a foul. You hear that in the NBA. You don't swallow your whistle because it's, 5 seconds left. If it's a foul, call it. Refs don't want to do that, but that guy had the stones to throw the flag, and it was the right call. And so, I think James Bradbury did a good job of just putting that to rest. There's been this constant conversation surrounding the Eagles' offensive and defensive coordinators and the job that they've done this season. And I've been adamant about both of these guys, but both at opposite ends of the spectrum. For Shane Steichen, I'm like, this guy needs to be hired immediately. This guy's doing a phenomenal job. Like, what he was able to do with that Eagles offense, it just seemed like he always had the right call. I look at I thought was a crucial sequence, right? Jalen Hurts fumbles. And look, Hurts doesn't turn it over very often. That's one of the things that you love about Jalen Hurts, is he protects the football. Doesn't throw a ton of picks. Doesn't fumble the football very often. Doesn't even take a ton of sacks, honestly. Which I thought he was a little bit reckless a couple of times, running out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage, losing unnecessary yardage where he could have just flicked it out of bounds. But he didn't do a lot of things that put you in harm's way. Hurts is really, really smart with the football. That's one of his greatest attributes. So when he fumbled that football, it was sort of a shell shock moment, because he doesn't do things like that. And it went for a touchdown. And, obviously that was a third down. The Chiefs got it right. They called a particular stunt there that Hurts thought he could get that quarterback draw. It didn't work. You're thinking to yourself, they're probably going to go for it. Normally when you run it on third down and, 4 or 5 or whatever, you're looking to go for it on fourth down, which the Eagles did quite a few times throughout the course of the evening. They were playing a lot of the game as if, and we got 4 downs to pick up 10 yards. especially once they got near midfield, they were a lot of times in 4-down territory, and they were allowed to be in those situations because they constantly stayed ahead of the sticks. It was a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2 very often. So it put them in a position where we could run it on 3rd down. We don't get it. We'll just get in our quarterback sneak push formation, and they're not going to stop it. And the Eagles, I think they were in that 6 times last night, and they were 6 of 6, including 2 touchdowns in that same formation. So I thought that was a really good philosophy on their part, but he was going to get stopped there. But he fumbles, they scoop it up, and they score. And Shane Steichen on the very next possession. And it was funny, we were in the comment section, and somebody said, this is a big possession for Hurts. I want to see how he responds. And I remember saying this before the very first snap even took place. I don't worry about Jalen Hurts from the neck up or the waist down. That's never been a concern for me. It's always been this torso area where the arm is, right? And he alleviated a lot of that concern last night. It was one game, but that's what he was doing most of the season. But he did it at a much higher level last night. But I don't worry about Jalen Hurts, being affected by one play. He's a mentally tough guy. He gets it. He's a great leader. He understands what's required of him. He understands what his team needs from him. He gets it. So Shane Steichen essentially coming right back to him like a receiver who had just dropped a pass on a critical 3rd down, coming right back to him with the exact same quarterback run and picking up like 14. I'm like, that's genius. Like, I don't know if many coordinators do that, right? Come right back to the exact same play he fumbles on and says, no. We're going to make sure that they understand that we're not going to stop running this, and you're good. 14-yard gain, and then boom, they will go right down the field and they score a touchdown, man. Take the 21-14 lead, and it was a masterful drive. And I thought that first play, Shane Steichen setting the tempo by saying, hey, my dude just fumbled on this exact same play. Guess what? We're coming right back to you, and we're going to run the exact same play to the opposite side, and we're going to see if they can stop it. And they couldn't. And so Steichen has been fantastic all year long. He seems to always have the right answers, no matter the down and distance. I mean, it's 3rd and 14. They run a corner, a bench route to Dallas Goedert, and that throw was orgasmic. If you're an Eagles fan, that throw is orgasmic. It's one of those throws where you say, oh my God, Jalen Hurts is a lot better than I thought he was. Like, last night was one of those, if you were on the fence or you want to hate him, right? You want to hate, but you can't hate on a performance like that. You have to understand how good he was. And that throw, to me, that's an elite throw that only a few guys in the league would even dare attempt, let alone make. That thing was as pinpoint accurate as it gets. So I thought Steichen was on his best behavior last night. And I thought that Hurts was absolutely fantastic. And conversely, I thought that a guy that had been garbage all year long, or at least sus, if nothing else, that people kept giving all this credit to because the Eagles were, forcing turnovers. They had 70 sacks on the season. We're approaching the NFL record for most sacks in a single season. And so Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coordinator, has been lauded and praised, and he was being showered with all these accolades, and he should get head coaching attention. And I'm like, are you guys watching the same shit I'm watching? Because this guy sucks. And my analogy is he's just rolling the ball out and saying, all right, fellas, just go play. He's got a team full of all-stars, right? And that I don't necessarily feel that way about the Eagles defensively. He's got some really good players: Darius Slade, James Bradbury, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat was phenomenal this year. Javon Hargrave, like they've got really good football players on defense, and I think a lot of what they were able to do defensively really stemmed from what they were able to do offensively. they took it to teams offensively. And because they got up on teams so quickly, it took teams out of their game plan. It forced you to, you wanted to come in, you want to run the ball, you want to be balanced. You look up, you're down 24-7, or you're down 24-0, or you're down 31-10, and all of a sudden you can't run the ball anymore. Now you have to throw it. Now they pin their ears back. Now they get after you. They got some good guys that can cover in the secondary. They make it a little tough on you. You hold it a second longer than you should. Now you're sacked, right? But this wasn't because of schematics. This wasn't Jonathan Gannon being diabolical. This is just Jonathan Gannon rolling the ball out and saying, hey, fellas, we up 24. Let's get after them. 4-man rush. Let's play some good coverage back here. We should be fine. Keep everything in front of us. But I said, when I watched teams that could score the football, play against the Eagles defensively, they got torched. Now, they won these games. They beat Detroit, but they gave up 30-plus points. They beat Green Bay, but they gave up 30-plus points. They lost to Dallas. They gave up 40 points in that game. He didn't have an answer against teams like that. They didn't see enough of those teams in the regular season for us to really be able to gauge the Eagles and say, hey, no, they're capable. You can only beat the teams they put in front of you, and that's what they did. But I knew in my heart of hearts that if they got to the Super Bowl and they're going to see somebody good from the AFC, that's the thing. In the NFC, you can get away with murder because there's nothing over there. We've had this discussion already. You go to the AFC side of the bracket, you're going to have to do some shit. You have to get creative defensively. You're not going to just play coverage and think that shit's going to work. You're going to get your ass filleted against Joe Burrow, against Trevor Lawrence, against Josh Allen, against Patrick Mahomes. That shit's not going to fly. And you saw what happened. They got cooked on defense, specifically in the second half. Cooked. It was a tale of two halves. They couldn't get a stop. Now, I heard a lot of people complaining about the field conditions, but I liked what all the players said. Look, the field conditions were trash. However, both teams had to deal with it. And I think that's the way that you should look at it. Who was impacted by it more? I can't say, but at the end of the day, both teams had to play on the surface. It wasn't a great surface, but both teams had to play on it. And to me, that's not the reason the Eagles struggled defensively. They just weren't good enough, and they didn't make any adjustments. They didn't blitz. I thought they would come after Mahomes in the second half. I would have come after him on that first possession of the second half, personally. I would have come after him just to test the ankle. I just got to know, and if he cooks us, okay, I'll back off. But I just got to know, how well are you moving around? Never came after him, never shook him up, never made him feel uncomfortable. And you got to give credit to that Chiefs offensive line. They felt disrespected going into that game. You had Creed Humphrey, who never says anything. He tweeted out, put some effing respect on our name. You had their left tackle Brown, talking about, they didn't respect us. All they wanted to talk about was Philadelphia. They didn't want to talk about us. So they felt some type of way, and they went out and they played like they had a chip on their shoulder. And that wasn't just protecting Mahomes. That was also in the run game. They dominated the Eagles up front in the trenches, both sides of the football. In stopping the run, now the Eagles in pass protection, they did what they do best. I mean, Hurts was relatively clean. I think the Chiefs had 2 sacks in the game, and both were because Hurts ran out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage. Like, he wasn't sacked, and he was rarely pressured in the game. And when he did, and look, the thing I love about Steve Spagnuolo is I'm going to come after your ass. Like, you're going to get me a couple of times. You're going to catch me in some looks, and you're going to make me pay. But eventually, I'm going to come after your ass. And he came after him a couple of times, and Hurts made plays, man. He made plays. The biggest takeaways from the game are Mahomes is now in a different stratosphere, right? He's in a different category now. When you win multiple Super Bowls, I did this last night. There are a lot of quarterbacks that have won 1 Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers only has, like, we talk about Aaron Rodgers and we revere him in this light, and I'm guilty of this. I'm a big Aaron Rodgers fan. He's one of the best passers of the football my eyes have seen. I've watched his entire career, and I can say that he's one of the best to ever spin it. He's only won one Super Bowl. One. He's only been to 2 Super Bowls. Okay? Or excuse me, he's only been to 1 Super Bowl. 1 Super Bowl. That's it. He's been to like 6 NFC championship games, but he's only been to 1 Super Bowl. Drew Brees has only won 1 Super Bowl. It's a lot of quarterbacks. And I said this last night. A lot of quarterbacks with 1 Super Bowl ring. Trent Dilfer has the Super Bowl ring. Yeah, you can go down the list of quarterbacks. Brad Johnson has a Super Bowl ring. No disrespect to Brad Johnson, but a lot of guys have 1. Okay? Not many guys have 2. Now you're in that John Elway, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning realm, right? Now you're in a different category. After you get to 3, though, or more, you're in rarefied air. We're talking about Tom Brady, Troy Aikman. We're talking about Terry Bradshaw. Like, these are the guys. The list is small. It's short. With quarterbacks with 3 or more Super Bowl rings. Steve Young only has 1. You're talking Montana. You're talking Tom Brady. You're talking Terry Bradshaw. You're talking Troy Aikman. I think that's the list. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the list of quarterbacks with 3 or more Super Bowl wins. He's 1 away from that in 5 years of starting. He's already solidified himself as a Hall of Fame quarterback in 5 years. 5 short years of being a starter. He's already solidified himself as one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. So that happened last night. And that performance on 1 ankle, it takes him into a different category, different discussion. Okay? So that happened last night. Andy Reid takes himself from a Super Bowl winning head coach to a 2-time Super Bowl winning head coach. That takes him into a different category as well. I don't think anybody was debating whether Andy Reid was a Hall of Fame head coach before this game. But if there was any debate, that's dead. Andy Reid is a Super Bowl winning coach now 2 times, and he's one of the winningest head coaches in NFL history, regular season and postseason combined. So I think his legacy has been cemented with this 2nd Super Bowl victory. And then there was talk. I had said this, and I was just like matter of fact, nonchalant. It was a throwaway line. Andy Reid isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Patrick Mahomes is going to be there. They're going to make music for so many years to come. And there was a conversation that happened before the game where Andy Reid said he was mulling over whether he should retire after this Super Bowl. Not whether they won or lost. It's just like after this season, maybe I should hang it up. He's had a lot of trouble, a lot of strife in his life with his kids. One's buried, God rest his soul. All right. With drugs and things of that nature. He had another son that was on, their staff that got into an accident where he struck a car that, gravely injured a very young, girl. And they ended up having to fire him. I think he's, had got jail time for that. Like, he's had a lot of things going on with his kids. So maybe he's like, you know what? Maybe I should, hang it up, spend some time with my family. That was a real thing. I don't think he's going anywhere, though. I don't think he's walking away from football right now. We'll see. But we know what the legacy is of Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes and that group. They've solidified themselves as a legitimate potential dynasty. I think that's the word now. We're starting to throw the D word around. Dynasty. That's 2 Super Bowls in 4 years. They went to 3 in the last 4 years. Won 2 of them. They've been to 5 straight AFC Championship games. They've hosted all 5 of them. They're embarking upon that D word. So that was one of the takeaways from last night, right? Mahomes is into a different category now. Reid is into a different category. And this Chiefs team overall, they're into a different category now. Conversely, the Eagles, there are a lot of questions, right? But I'm just going to tell you, things just got a lot more complicated across the board in so many different areas, okay? I start here with this. I don't know how you felt about Jalen Hurts going into the game last night. I can tell you how I felt about him. Really good season. Haven't been impressed with him since the shoulder injury. Has been wildly inaccurate, missing throws. Hadn't been all that good in the postseason, but he was a passenger. You know, they ran the football over 260 yards rushing against the Giants. They ran it down the 49ers' throats. You know, especially after they got that lead, they were able to really control the game with the ground game, and he didn't have to do much there, and he wasn't accurate. I was like, it was a solid season. You know, at one point he was in the MVP discussion. Never thought he would win it, but I want to see it again. Show me again, and I still feel that way. Like, do it again, and I'll talk about where that comes into the equation of do it again. But what he did last night, he changed the way he is viewed in the NFL. I was at the gym today, and when I go into the gym locker room, they always have on one of 2 channels. Or one of 3 channels. They either have Fox Business on, CNBC, or they've got ESPN on. ESPN was not only on, but it was so loud I could hear it from the hallway before I even got into the locker room. So I go in, and you know, I'm not an ESPN guy. You guys know that. I don't watch ESPN. I don't watch Fox Sports 1. None of those shows. Undisputed, First Take, none of that shit. I don't consume any of it. You know, but I'm about to go get in the sauna, and I'm getting undressed, and I'm getting my stuff together, and it's on. And I just catch a brief 2 minutes as I'm getting myself prepared to head into the sauna. And they're talking about Jalen Hurts as a top 5 quarterback in the league. Let that sink in. Let that shit marinate for a second. Don't say nothing. Don't say nothing. Just let that shit savor for a second. That's how good he played last night. He played so well this season. Again, he was in the MVP conversation, but had he had a meager game last night, oh, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's the Chiefs, you know, Hurts wasn't ready, you know, that shoulder injury, we would have made some excuses, and those who wanted to would have made excuses for him, and we would have just said, hey, his first Super Bowl appearance, you know, that stage was pretty big, the lights were pretty bright, you know, we'll see what happens if he gets back there again. That's not what we got. We got a performance for the ages. I don't know if a losing quarterback has ever played that well in the Super Bowl. I kid you not. I don't know if this has ever happened. It's probably happened once or twice, if I had to guess. Probably back in the day. For a split second, I thought to myself, what if they still gave the Super Bowl MVP to Jalen Hurts even though they lost? It was a fleeting thought. You can't give the Super Bowl MVP to a losing player. That doesn't happen anymore. 30 years ago, maybe. 40 years ago, definitely. You can't do that in today's day and age. And Mahomes deserved it, even though the numbers weren't, over the top. His play was so impactful, and he made every single play, including that 26-yard scramble on the last possession. He was outstanding in the second half. He was the MVP, not only of the league but of that game, because they won. But for a fleeting moment, I said, I wouldn't be mad if they said, hey, Mahomes, great game. Y'all won. But hey, Hurts, come up here and get this MVP trophy, though. You're the Super Bowl MVP. Like, he was that good. And it facilitated a conversation where people were actually debating whether he was top 5 in the league, not in the NFC, in the league. Things just got complicated in the NFC because there wasn't a guy in the conference. There was nobody. With Rodgers potentially departing, with Brady retiring, there's nobody. With Russell Wilson leaving last year, there's nothing. Go through the entire conference. Find a guy. What do you got? Kirk Cousins? Dak Prescott? Find a guy. Where is that guy? Was it Matthew Stafford? Who's the guy in the NFC? There isn't one. Maybe there is now. I don't want to jump the gun. I'm not that guy. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But maybe, just maybe, there's a guy now. His performance last night started that conversation. So things are getting complicated in the NFC now because maybe you got to go through the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. But things got complicated for the Eagles last night as well. And I said this about the Phoenix Suns when they traded for Kevin Durant. My buddy is one of my best friends, is a Phoenix Suns fan. And he wanted no parts of the KD trade because his favorite player was Mikal Bridges. He wanted to keep Mikal Bridges in that trade so badly. And I felt like if they kept Mikal Bridges, they're probably going to win the NBA championship. He makes that big of a difference. He's one of the better young two-way players in the NBA. But if I'm Brooklyn, there's no way I'm making that deal and Mikal Bridges isn't included. Like, that's a deal breaker for me. Either you give me Mikal Bridges or you're not getting KD. Either way, he wasn't happy with the trade because they gave up Mikal Bridges, but they also gave up a ton of shooting, right? Mikal Bridges was one of the better three-point shooters on their team, and Cam Johnson's one of the best three-point shooters in the league. So you don't really have a lot of shooting. You don't even have a lot of bench depth if you're Phoenix. You got stuff. You don't have a lot of depth. And God forbid, KD's already hurt. Devin Booker's missed a good chunk of the season, and CP3 is 97 years old, and he's missed time this year. God forbid anything happens to either Book or KD, they're screwed. However, if they're healthy and they develop a rapport on the court, they're going to be dangerous. But what they've effectively done in Phoenix is they've given themselves a 3-year window. KD has 3 years left on his deal. Okay? I think this is Chris Paul's last year. That's my guess. This is it for him. They may go get Kyrie after this season, or they may go get a guard after this season. We'll see what they end up doing. But for all intents and purposes, they got 3 years. They've pushed all their chips to the center of the table. They got 3 years to win a damn Super Bowl or NBA championship. They don't do it in that 3-year window, they're not going to win a championship for the next 15 to 20 years minimum. They gave up 4 first-round draft picks. They're screwed. Okay? The Eagles, I feel like, aren't in that predicament, but shit just got really interesting for them. Shit just got complicated because you're going to have to pay Jalen Hurts good money after the season he just turned in. Really good money. And it was going to be close to top of the market money, maybe not top of the market, but it was going to be close. After the performance he just turned in, he's getting top of the market money, buddy. Okay? He's going to reset the quarterback market with that thing. And it's going to alter the way you're going to be able to do business. It's just, and it's the cost of doing business in this league when you've got a franchise quarterback. Trust me, I'd love to be in that predicament. As a fan, give me a team, give me a quarterback, make me have to pay this dude so I don't have to worry about the most important position in the sport for the next 7 to 10 years. Let me figure out how I'll, configure the roster around this dude. But guess what? I need that position to be settled. I don't need to be worried about what am I going to do at quarterback this year. They won't have that problem in Philadelphia, but they're going to have to pay him. Can't pay everybody. When you start paying quarterbacks, 13, 14% of your salary cap, which is what the Eagles are probably effectively going to have to do here. They got a lot of guys that were on one-year deals. They went for it this year. They didn't push all their chips to the center of the table, but they went for it. And they didn't get it. And this was the year to get it. They didn't get it, and you're going to lose some of these guys. Fletcher Cox is a year older. This probably was his last year in Philadelphia, if I had to guess. He had a really good year, a good bounce back year. But can you afford to pay him and Javon Hargraves, who's like 18 million years younger? Like, I'd take Javon Hargraves over Fletcher Cox, right? Brandon Graham, older player. How much longer does he have? He's a year older. James Bradbury was a one-year deal. You're probably going to have to draft a corner. That's going to be my guess. Jason Kelsey, he was thinking about retiring last year. Probably going to retire. Maybe this season was so much fun that he decides to come back. But you drafted a guy, I think Cam Jurgens, out of Nebraska in the second round last year. You're ready. You're like, the Eagles aren't just screwed, but you're going to have some decisions to make. Because you got to pay Jalen Hurts. Like, TJ Edwards may be gone because you got to pay Jalen Hurts. Like you're gonna have to sacrifice some guys potentially. Things just got complicated for the Eagles. Things just got complicated for the rest of the conference with Jalen Hurts' ascension potentially. I want to have a conversation though about Hurts as a top 5 quarterback. I think that's a bit premature. Yeah, he did it on the biggest stage there is. And you can't discount that. But I said this before we had Hurts mania, before it hurts so good. I'm a guy that needs to see it multiple times before I believe it. Now, when you do it on the stage he just did it on, you kind of speed up the process. Maybe you skipped a step, okay? Because it doesn't get any bigger than the Super Bowl. But I can't put him in front of Joe Burrow. I can't put him in front of Josh Allen. I can't put him in front of Patrick Mahomes. I can't even put him in front of Justin Herbert. Right? Like, that's 4 guys. They were acting as if they were struggling to find 5, guys, that they could put in front of them. That's 4. And I could probably pick out 3 or 4 more guys easy that I'd still take Aaron Rodgers before him. I'd take Trevor Lawrence before I took him. And that may be crazy and blasphemous to some people. And I need to see more from Lawrence. I'm not sold on him yet either. But I'd take his upside. He's got a bigger arm. He's just as good an athlete. I think he's only going to get better, right? Hurts had the luxury of being in the same system with Sirianni for the last 2 years, and it showed. That was Trevor Lawrence's first year, and he went 24/8. A dramatic improvement over what he was in his rookie season. I can only shudder to think at what he's going to be in year 2 of Doug Peterson's system. I think he's going to be fantastic. And they're going to add more weapons. Remember, Calvin Ridley is a Jacksonville Jaguar next year if they lift his suspension. So he's going to get more weapons. They're going to be even more dangerous. I'd take Trevor Lawrence over him right now. That was a hell of a performance, though. So I'd still take other quarterbacks. I don't think he's top 5 yet. I think that's a premature conversation. But I'm just telling you right now, the fact that we're even having that type of a discussion is crazy. And I think it's one of those situations where people can become prisoners of the moment. If he does it again next year, and let's say he's hovering around MVP conversation, or let's say he's not even in that conversation, but the Eagles end up 12-5 and they win the NFC East, or they're 11-6 and they miss out on the NFC East by a game or whatever, but he was still really good. Okay, yeah, no, he's bona fide, but you got to do it again. We've seen individual seasons where guys had out-of-body experiences, and we were saying this exact thing about Carson Wentz 6 years ago. And then look what happened to Carson Wentz. So I'm a little bit apprehensive to go that far. But man, you want to talk about impressive? It doesn't get much more impressive than what Jalen Hurts did in a losing effort in the Super Bowl. And the fact that we're even having this conversation tells you just how impressive that performance was. And I'm anxious to see. Things are going to get complicated because when you win at the level that the Eagles did, people want a piece of your squad. And Shane Steichen looks like he might be gone. I pray that Jonathan Gannon remains the defensive coordinator in Philadelphia. I pray that no one poaches him away and they just let him continue to rot that Eagles defense from within. Nobody come save them. Arizona, don't take him. Go get somebody else. Go find another clown to hire. Leave him in Philadelphia where he belongs. Because as long as he's there, I don't think they're capable of winning the Super Bowl. Leave his ass right there. But I think Shane Steichen's good as gone. So what does that do to Jalen Hurts? I don't know. We'll see. What do the Eagles do? Do they promote from within? Do they go outside and bring somebody in? Does Hurts have to learn a brand new offense? But they were talking about he's never been in the same offense 2 years in a row. He finally got an opportunity, and look what happened. He could be moving on. And they could be bringing somebody else in. If they're smart, they'll find somebody on that staff that speaks the same language as Shane Steichen, and they just promote from within so that you don't change what you were able to do this season. But that might not be possible. There may not be a quarterback's coach or a receivers coach or someone of that ilk on that staff that you feel comfortable being promoted to offensive coordinator. They may have to go out and get a guy. And if I'm Shane Steichen and I really believe in my quarterback's coach, I'm bringing him with me. He's my offensive coordinator in Indianapolis. Even though I may be calling the plays, he'll get the title of OC. I'm bringing my guy with me. So it'll be interesting to see. Things just got complicated. Things just got complicated. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section. See what you guys have to say. Niners fan. First of all, I have a super chat. I think I got a super chat. I do. This one is from the Phillies Ace 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy. The Phillies Ace 34 writes, Louie, I drink cold water. The game is over. Philly has lost 3 chips this season. I know. Washington, New York, Dallas can laugh, but no other city in our division especially can't say that. So like people say, nothing good happens in Philly. The Celtics lost, the Phillies lost, and now the Eagles lost. It was inevitable that the Eagles lost because of what had already transpired with the other 2 teams. But look, this has always been my stance. I can't tell anybody else how to fan, right? I can't tell anybody else how to fan. But my approach has always been, if it ain't you, be humble. Simple as that. If it ain't you, if I didn't beat you, be humble. If my team isn't playing, be humble. There's a time and a place to act a fool, show your ass. But if you ain't the one doing the damage, don't show your ass, act with class. That's always been my moniker. right? We didn't beat Philadelphia yesterday. The Chiefs did. I get to celebrate in that because the Eagles didn't win a Super Bowl, but we didn't do the damage. I acted an ass when we beat Philadelphia. You know why? We did the damage. We beat the Eagles. So I got to show my ass. I didn't have to act with class. I didn't have to be humble. We did damage. We didn't do any damage last night. We were on the couch watching the Chiefs handle business. So I can be excited and cheer from afar, but I'm going to be humble. Not going to show my ass. I'm going to act with class. But you're going to get fans that don't give a shit. They're going to let you know you didn't win the Super Bowl. If you ain't first, you last. So shut up, grab a glass, and prop your ass on the couch with us. You're going to get some fans that operate in that space. That ain't me. But you drink cold water. How cold are we talking, though? Like, there's cold, and then, so, all right, so let's clarify this. Room temperature, cold, damn near freezing. Those are the three levels. I'm assuming you like the middle, cold water, not too damn cold, not freezing, damn near freezing, but cold. Okay, I can accept that. We got another super chat, and then after that, Starface. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, hard work pays off. It's not just Pat's talent. A lot of people don't understand how much goes into doing what some of these guys are able to do. You only see the end result. One of my favorite things to talk about people with is when you see somebody with a fly-ass car, or you see somebody with a big-ass house, and you're like, damn, I want that shit. That's cool. You can want that car. You know, you can want that house. But do you want what that dude or that female has to do to get that? Are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to sacrifice what it takes to get those material things? And a lot of people aren't. You don't see the behind the scenes work. You just see the end result. Patrick Mahomes is super talented. There are a lot of guys that come into it. Zach Wilson is super talented. To me, there's a difference between the two of them. And that difference is one is incredibly humble and works hard. And the other thinks that he can just show up and his talent so shine through. And there's a big difference. You know, a wise man once said, talent beats hard work any day, but hard work beats talent every day. That shit resonated with me. And a lot of people, Jalen Hurts is a prime example. He didn't just magically get better. He works. He puts in the work. He's not the most talented dude, but he puts in the work. But if you have talent, if you were blessed, if you were able to get in just about every single line and God blessed you, but you don't put in the work, you're never going to meet the expectations of what your talents say that you should. I watch a lot of this show on Netflix called Last Chance U. And I've lately been watching a lot of the basketball ones. I initially got into the series watching the football one. But I think the basketball one is more, to me, gripping, because it doesn't take much in football, you know, to find yourself at a JUCO. You know, with basketball, because there's so much that goes into this, and you got to play on these AAU teams, and you got to travel, you got to play at all these different camps so you can be seen and get ranked. And, you know, to see how some of these dudes, like, they're saying, yo, I was on the same court with Trey Young and all of these dudes that got drafted in 2018, and I was better than all of them. And now I'm here at ELAC. You know what I'm saying? And it's not because they're not talented. Clearly, they were talented enough to be in the ranks of Trey Young and all of those guys that got drafted in 2018. It's not that they weren't talented. It's because they either had some shit off the court that they couldn't handle. A lot of these dudes have, they lack the self-discipline. They get upset, something doesn't go their way, and they fly off the handle. They make a rash decision. I'm transferring, instead of just sticking it out. But all in all, I say that to say this. A lot of these dudes are super talented, but they don't work. They don't put in the work. At practice, they get pissed off because the coach is coming down hard on them, and they walk out of practice. You got to be able to take talent and pair that, marry that with hard work if you want to be the best. Thank you for that. Starface. Got another super chat. This one is from Starface again. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Starface, who writes, Sam Howell is greater than Hurts, better arm with similar mobility. I can't give you that. You got to pump your brakes and drive slow, homie. Drive slow. I can tell you this. Sam Howell has a skill set that will allow him to be successful if that work that we just talked about, he puts in and he gets to find his way to a guy that offensively gets his skill set and is able to maximize it. We'll see what happens, but he has some talent, but he is not Jalen Hurts. Don't fool yourself. Similar mobility. He's not squatting a small house like Jalen Hurts. I don't think Sam Howell is able to do the things that Jalen Hurts does from a physicality standpoint. Finishing runs, lowering his shoulder in quarterback sneaks and pushing forward. Like, he can do some things athletically. He's got some mobility. He ain't Jalen Hurts, though. Don't fool yourself. But he's a good athlete. He's a better athlete than people give him credit for. And he does have a stronger arm than Jalen Hurts. But strong arm doesn't always mean, better quarterback. So he's going to have to prove it. Hurts has proven it now. All the way to the Super Bowl. In the MVP conversation. He's proven it already. Sam Howell has not. So he's going to have to do that. Matthew, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Matthew, writes, LT, Philly's schedule next year is the opposite of this year. 11-6 would be great. Their DC was a clown, not making Mahomes run and test that leg. Cost them. The first thing I thought that they would have done in the second half would have been, I'm pressuring Mahomes just to test him out, just to see. Just to see. And clearly Mahomes was able to manage the pain, and he was able to go out there and play and play, relatively carefree on what was a bum ankle, right? And obviously something was done at halftime. Let's not kid ourselves, but it doesn't matter. He was still banged up. He was still compromised. And he never really tested Mahomes to see if he was really good. That was one of our favorite phrases when I was in high school. What's really good? No, what's really good? People would say it back and forth. What's really good? No, what's really good? No, what's really, really good? I would have came out of the halftime break if I'm Jonathan Gannon. I want to know what's really, really good with Patrick Mahomes. He never really checked to see. It's not just Philly's schedule that's going to be, an ass kicker. Everybody's schedule in the NFC East. I told anybody that would listen that the NFC East in particular was going to be good. Now, I didn't think the Giants were going to be good. I thought Washington had a chance to be really good, right? I didn't think Philadelphia would be really good because Jalen Hurts wasn't going to take that next step. But I said Dallas was a 12-win team. I thought Washington could be a 12-win team, but I thought more like 11. But I said 12. But I said Philadelphia is a 9-win team with Hurts being mid. If he's any good, they're a 12, 13-win team. He was good. They were a 14-win team. I didn't think the Giants were going to be good under any circumstances. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year for them. They won 9 games. I didn't anticipate the division being as good from a totality standpoint with no team finishing below 500. That said, the schedule was what it was, and the division took advantage of what was put in front of them, and they did what they were supposed to do. But you're not getting that again next year. None of the teams are. Philly's going to have a first-place schedule, so they're going to have a couple of tougher games. We perceive them to be tough, but we don't know. I just told you the NFC's trash, right? The Seahawks won the 49ers won the division. We don't know what the hell their quarterback situation is going to be. We hear that Brock Purdy's going to be ready for the start of training camp. We'll see. We'll see if he's ready or not. We don't know what the hell's going to happen with Trey Lance. We don't know anything with San Francisco. You know, Minnesota won the division. Who's afraid of the Vikings? I can tell you, nobody. The Buccaneers won the AFC or the NFC South. It was the worst division in football. There's no Tom Brady. So are the Eagles really playing that tough of a schedule because they won first place last year? No, they're not. Overall, the entire division has a tougher schedule because you're not playing the AFC South and the NFC North next season. So we'll see how everybody navigates that, including Philadelphia. We'll see. The Phillies Ace 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Louie, exactly right with the cold water, but within our division, should we be worried because next year is going to be tougher? I think Dallas regresses. I think the division overall isn't going to be as sharp. I think that Kellen Moore moving on may impact them. It may not. We'll see what they decide to do there and how that, impacts their offense. I wasn't the biggest Kellen Moore fan, so I'm not going to sit here and act like his departure is going to somehow derail Dallas's season next year. But I think next year's a big year for Dak because this loss you could squarely put on his shoulders. He wasn't good enough. So I think this is a big season for him. McCarthy, obviously a big season for him as well. We'll see what happens with Dallas. We'll see what happens with the entire division. I just know the division, I feel like, is going to take a step back, other than maybe Washington and the Giants, because they weren't great last year, So a step back for them might be 1 or 2 games, but I'm talking about Dallas and Philly. Dallas won 12 games. I can't see them duplicating that next year. Philly won 14 games. I can't see them duplicating that next year. But does a step back mean 11 wins versus 14, or does it just mean 12 instead of 14? We'll see. We'll see what happens. The Phillies Ace 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. The Phillies Ace 34 writes, Washington, New York will progress. I think Jalen is better than Dak Prescott. Majority of good teams have good systems per Tom Brady. Warner, Peyton, that is a part of it. Like it matters the system that you play in because there's something to be said about being comfortable. Peyton Manning played in the same system in Indianapolis for probably the better part of a decade. Tom Brady was pretty much with Josh McDaniels his entire time. There was a little, Charlie Weiss period there, but it was really when he came of age and was at his best, version of himself, it was under, Josh McDaniels in New England, and he was in that system for a very long time, right? And you see that with a lot of these quarterbacks. I think Brady was really good with Bruce Arians, Bruce Arians goes away, and now it's Leftwich, and we can say Leftwich was calling the plays, but Arians, no risk it, no biscuit mentality was you could see it playing itself out on the field in that first year. Not so much last year, right? Not this past year, rather. So a system, I think it definitely matters. Ben Roethlisberger was, a really good quarterback in that little pocket when he had Bruce Arians. He never went back to another Super Bowl without him. It matters. So, we'll see what happens if Shane Steichen is to take the job in Indianapolis. All right, let's get to a few more comments, and then we'll move on. Niners fan says, I can say pretty confidently that we would have lost to Kansas City. Also, Debo needs to stop talking. We lost to Philly. Can't be trash talking them when you lose by 20 plus points. It's disgusting. Look, he's got pride, and it's easy for those players on the 49ers. I saw what's the other receiver's name? Brandon Ayuk couldn't stand Philadelphia. He picked Kansas City to win. He was like, they pretty much there because we lost our quarterback. Like, it's easy to dismiss what Philadelphia did to them because they didn't have Brock Purdy. They feel like they would have won that game if they had their quarterback. So he's going to keep talking. I prefer my players to just go about their business, but that's not everybody. It's not everybody operates. That's not how everybody thinks. So, Syndico, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the comment. Who writes, mistakes were the determining factor in the game. Kansas City had 3 penalties. Philly had 6. Hurts had crucial mistakes. The fumble for 6 and the delay of game cost them that second half turnover. I talked about that during the game. There were some crucial penalties. Both teams had some big penalties. 2 of those 3 Kansas City penalties came on crucial 3rd and 4th down situations where the Eagles didn't even have to snap the ball. They gave them a first down. Like, you can't do that. And then the Eagles penalties were huge as well. Like, both, there weren't many penalties called, but the ones that were called were very impactful. I talked about that yesterday. Hurts did have the fumble, but he played so well. He played so well that you gotta, and that's not who he is. You just kind of say, okay, it is what it is. So I got some responses here. Cal Bundy says chilled. So you like it cold. Starface says cold as hell. Okay. Rufio says depends on the weather. Why does that matter? I guess if it's super hot outside, you want cold ass water. Okay. I get that. I get it. Donald Gray says room temperature. Let's say Matthew says room temperature, 0 water pitcher on the counter. RRP podcast says room temperature unless it's a scorcher, then chilled. Alante Etheridge says room temperature. I feel like this, and everybody's different. I feel like older people prefer room temperature water. So theoretically, room temperature water is better for you, better for your body, everything. When you drink water that is super cold, it freezes everything, including your bowels. You use the bathroom. That said, I like my water cold as hell, as cold as I can get it without. Sometimes I even want the little frozen crystals in the water. I don't want it frozen, but I want little frozen chunks in there as I'm drinking it, Anyway, I digress. Syndico writes, seriously? Water on the brink of freezing. I keep my refrigerator right on the edge of freezing. Me too. Ice waters down your drink in case you didn't know. I am very similar in that my fridge is cold as hell. Anything in the back of the fridge is basically frozen. SOL's Nation says, if I'm hot, I like my water barely frozen so I can break the ice squeezing the bottle. Yeah, you on to something there. Other than that, I don't care. Water is water. Okay. I don't give a shit. It could be cold as hell outside. I still want my water cold. But there's nothing like cold ass water on a hot day. I definitely understand some of you saying that. Anyway, I digress. Woo Kim says room. All right, so that was a good little quick convo there. Red Wings says, them red zone plays, man, that's exactly what we've been missing. Somehow Bieniemy made himself more enticing. I got a Washington video coming out later on this evening that I'm going to talk about a little bit of that then. Let's see. So let's wrap this show up with garbage time. And I know y'all saw this over the weekend, and you know how big I am on this. We got the Hall of Fame class for 2023. And I'm a pseudo gatekeeper of the Hall of Fame. I don't know why I do this. I don't know why I do this to myself, because clearly the NFL doesn't give a damn. So why should I? Like Deion Sanders said, they're just letting anybody in. And I don't know. I've heard this pitched, and I thought this was just somebody throwing out a random idea like, yo, this would be pretty dope. But I think it's starting to grow legs. I think people are actually starting to entertain the idea of the Hall of Fame having like different levels. And I think Tom Brady retiring, kind of brought that conversation back to the forefront about levels, because he's so good and he's in a different class. And there are only a select few guys that at different positions were at the level of a Tom Brady. Like Deion is unquestionably, well, depending on who you ask, but most people consider Deion Sanders to be the greatest corner in NFL history. There's some other guys that might be in that discussion, and there's some names that could be there. Most people, call Jim Brown the greatest running back of NFL history, but there are other names that you could throw in that conversation: Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, et cetera, et cetera. Jerry Rice is unquestioned at the receiver position, and I think he's more closer to Brady than anybody else, because there is no other receiver that is in the stratosphere with Jerry Rice, and I don't know if anybody will ever eclipse Jerry Rice as the greatest receiver of all time. But someone said there should be another wing, another level. There should be tiers to the NFL Hall of Fame. I think that's the case. Like, Curtis Martin is really good, and he was a Hall of Fame, but like, he's not the same as, Jim Brown or Barry Sanders. Like, but he's in Hall of Fame. It is what it is, right? Anyway, I digress. So the 2023 Pro Football Hall of Fame class, it was announced, and I want to make sure I get all of the names. I don't want to leave anybody out. The new 9 inductees: Rondé Barber, Chuck Howley, Joe Klecko, Darrelle Revis, Ken Riley, Joe Thomas, Zach Thomas, DeMarcus Ware, and Don Coryell. Now, some of these guys, I have no idea who they are. I don't know who Chuck Howley is. Joe Klecko, the name rings a bell, but it doesn't really resonate with me. I know Barber, I know Revis, I know Joe Thomas, I know Zach Thomas, DeMarcus Ware, and I know Don Coryell for his contribution to the NFL with the Air Coryell system that still is being utilized in the NFL in different forms today. So, of the guys that have gotten in, or going to get in rather this year, Barber is so deserving. I'm so glad he's getting in, because I thought he was severely underrated throughout his career. He's one of those guys that did everything: coverage, sacks, interceptions. I think he's in like a rare group of like 30 interceptions and 30 sacks or something like that. It's a crazy number. It's like 40-40 or 30-30, something like that. There aren't many guys in that category, where you get to the quarterback, but you're also picking off passes. Barber was so good in his career, and he was instrumental in the success of those Buccaneers teams that ultimately culminated in the 2002 championship. Darrelle Revis had an island named after him. He was an elite corner that traveled He deserves to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Joe Thomas was ironclad for, whatever 9 years he played. Sucks that he played on Browns teams that were some of the worst in NFL history, including a winless Brown team back in 2016 that they went winless, I think. Anyway, he deserves to be in. Zach Thomas, I struggle with Zach Thomas because he was a good player for a very long time. And I bet you if you look at his numbers, they were crazy. But I never felt like Zach Thomas was elite, which is what I think the Hall of Fame is all about. I think he was a really good football player. Like, if you're letting Zach Thomas in, then you probably should be letting in London Fletcher. And I don't think London Fletcher is a Hall of Fame linebacker. But I bet you if you look at London Fletcher's numbers and you look at Zach Thomas's numbers, they're not that far apart. But Zach Thomas was revered in his day as one of the better linebackers. But I'd love to see some statistics on him. How many All-Pros did he have? He was never like dominant to the point where he was being discussed in the MVP conversation or anything like that. I struggle with Zach Thomas. I knew he was eventually going to get in, but it is what it is. DeMarcus Ware, he's another guy that was really good in his career. I think the Denver Super Bowl put him over the top, right? Like, Zach Thomas didn't win a Super Bowl. He never even got close to going to a Super Bowl. Whereas DeMarcus Ware goes to Denver, has a second life on his career, and then was a huge part of them winning that 2015. That was one of the most dominant defenses we've seen in the last 10 years, was that 2015 Denver Broncos defense, and he was a huge part of that. And so I think that second iteration of his career is what put him over the top. He was one of those guys, angular build, but able to turn that corner and bend at a degree that we rarely see in the NFL, especially a guy of his stature. He's like 6'4", but he was able to bend like a James Harrison, get down to the size of a guy like James Harrison, who's like 5'11", 5'10", 5'11", somewhere in that neighborhood. DeMarcus Ware was a really good pass rusher. Was he a Hall of Famer, though? I bet you if I go look at his numbers, there's probably like 6 or 7 double-digit sack seasons in there. If he's over 100 sacks in his career, then he deserves to be in. If he's not, I don't know. Speaking of which, I'm anxious now. I'm actually want to see how many sacks DeMarcus Ware had in his career. Actually interested in that. DeMarcus Ware had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight double-digit sack seasons and 8 for his career total. And I didn't even realize there was a 20-piece in there with Dallas in 2008, a 15.5 in Dallas in 2010, a 19.5 in 2011, and then in Denver, he had a 10-sack season in 2014, and then 7.5 in that season when they were dominant defensively. It was him, it was Vaughn, and it was also Shaq Barrett on that 2015 team and then also Shane Ray was also on that team in 2015. They were dominant there. He's got to be, he had 20 in 1 year. He's got to be well over 100 sacks, 138.5. Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer, man. I'm tripping. That's not even a discussion. He deserves to be in. So I don't have a problem with that class. The one guy that I probably would debate would be Zach Thomas. But he probably, if I went back and looked at his career, he probably should be in. But I never felt like he was super dominant. And he was a tackling machine. Now, don't get me wrong. But I don't think he was ever like considered like top 3 at his position in his career. And I could be wrong about that. I'm just talking, man. He probably was considered one of the best, if not the best, middle linebacker during his career. But anyway, I digress. I don't really have a big issue with any of the names that are on that list, honestly speaking. Not like I did either it was last year or the year before last. Still don't know why my man Joe Jacoby isn't in the Hall of Fame. Another year goes by, another year that Joe Jacoby doesn't get in, another year that is an absolute travesty. Anyway, I digress. Got a super chat here from Starface. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Starface writes, young coaches are overrated. Only one young has won a ring, McVay. Experience matters the most in football. Finding that old dude with an open mind. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that assessment, but I don't think age matters all that much. Experience does matter, but you don't have to be an older coach to have experience. I mean, Mike Tomlin, was around the block a few times before he got the job. He was super young. I think he was the youngest coach in the league when he got the job with the Steelers, and probably within 2 or 3 years he was in the Super Bowl and he won it. You don't have to be have the old wily veteran coach to win a Super Bowl. You just got to, like you said, you got to have guys that are open-minded. You got to have an identity. And it helps when you got Patrick Mahomes or you got Tom Brady. Look at all of the Super Bowls that have been won over the last 10 to 15 years. You're probably going to trace it back to a dominant quarterback. And if you're not tracing it back to a dominant quarterback, then you're tracing it to a dominant defense. It's one of the two. And then there's probably a really good head coach standing behind all of that as well, whether he's young or old. When John Harbaugh won his in 2012, he wasn't relatively old, So you just want a guy that gets it. Whether he's 35, 45, or 55, you just want a guy that gets it. Period. Andy Reid allows a lot of freedom for his assistants to have ideas. He allows his players to they did that little circle motion huddle. And shit didn't work this time, but it worked the first time when they did it. Like, they're having fun, and not everybody runs their program. Like, Bill Belichick isn't running his program that way, but it's still successful, right? So again, but he had Tom Brady. So quarterback definitely matters. But you can win with any type of coach. You got to have the horses. Is what it all boils down to. And coaching, I think you got to have the right staff too, because your offensive and defensive coordinators got to get the job done. We saw that. One side of the ball got it done for Philadelphia, the other didn't, and they lost the game because of it. Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I saw Commanders 2023 opponents. Looks like a lot of two Spider-Man's memes. I like my water icy as a Coors commercial. We on the same path right there. We see it the same way with the water. And we'll see what the 2023 season brings. Things are getting things got complicated this season in the NFL. Things got really complicated. So I don't know what 2023 holds. After the free agency and draft dust settles and smoke clears, I think we'll be able to more accurately assess the schedule and predict what we think some of these teams are going to be, but we have no idea. Nobody knew the Giants were going to be a playoff team this year, right? Like, you might have thought Philadelphia, if you were a diehard Eagles fan, you might have thought that it literally was Hurts season, as Lord Brunson said, and that they were going to do damage, but most people didn't think the Eagles were going to be that good. Yeah, they were going to be good this season. They put together this ridiculous roster. Howie Roseman deserves a ton of credit for that. You didn't think they were going to be that good, though, right? I mean, Denver, they were going to be phenomenal this year. They got Russell Wilson. They got all this talent. They were one of the worst teams in football this year. We have no idea. You think Seattle was supposed to be ass-tastic. They made the playoffs. Geno Smith is about to get broken off. He said they wrote me off and I ain't right back. He made that a thing. Who saw that coming? The Jets were this close to making the playoffs this year. Like, the Lions were this close after starting 1-6. This close to making the playoffs this year. The Jags did make the playoffs this year. You have no idea. None. Titans didn't make the playoffs. They stunk after starting out 7-3. They fell flat on their face after they fired their GM. So we have no clue what's going to become of these teams. We can only speculate, but you have a better sense of speculation once free agency takes place, the draft takes place, and you start to see how some of these rosters take shape. Anyway, Matthew, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy Matthew writes, center, underrated. Are we solid there for this year? Teams need a Kelsey, a Jensen, a dog there. We taking a tight end. Center is a huge position. To me, it's the brains of the operation. You'd like your center to be super athletic and nasty too. I think they're going to do something at center. I think Chase Rouillet's future is up in the air in Washington. And after 2 seasons with major injuries that required surgery and his seasons being cut short, I think they may be going in a different direction this year at center. So I think center is something that's on their radar. Whether they go in free agency and get a center or they go in the draft and get it is unbeknownst to me. But they're going to do something at center this year. I don't think they're just going to say, hey, Chase Rouillet is going to heal and Larson's a free agent and we're going to let him walk, but we'll sign a backup. I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to address the center position this year. Tight end, I don't think they're going to do anything unless Logan Thomas is released. And that's a topic that's gaining a little bit of traction, but I still think Ron and company believe in Logan Thomas, still see him as a leader on this team. He's not making a ridiculous amount of money. I don't think he's going anywhere, but I could be wrong there. But if he's still around, John Bates is young. Cole Turner is young. Amani Rodgers is young. They're not going to do anything if the veteran of that group is still there. If the veteran of that group is no longer there, then they're going to do something. They're not just going to stay status quo with 3 young guys. They're going to add someone to the mix. Co, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, hell of a season, Lou. Can't wait for 2023. Hashtag HTTC. It was a hell of a season. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I would like it to be, a playoff season. I'd like it to start faster. I practically begged for meaningful November football. Hell, at one point I was begging for just get us out of October, man. We were 1-4, and we were a Darnell Mooney bobble away from being 1-5 and having our season be over. Probably the midpoint of October. We were this close to not making it to Halloween with a season. So I'd like to start faster if at all possible. That'd be great. We'll see what happens. But it was a fun season. I will admit that. Survivor Sam says Klecko was one half of the sack exchange with the Jets. Oh, he must have been the tag team partner of the guy that had the sack record. Oh, shucks. Why am I blanking on his name? The guy with the funky sack dance that had the sack record for an eternity until Strahan beat him for the single season sack record. Can't remember his name right now, but okay, that makes sense. I told you the name, it made sense to me. I just couldn't put it where it belonged. He was a Jet. Gotcha. Makes a ton of sense. Big Money Sonny, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Big Money Sonny. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, Luck still have your head on a swivel? Of course he does. I mean, he tried to get me last night. Like, it's never over with Luck. And I'll never take a second to breathe with him around. Even when he's not there, he's still lingering. I feel his presence. Yeah, my head's always on the swivel, bro. Always. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Mark Gastineau. Thank you, Steve Losh. Mark Gastineau was his name. So I'm assuming that was the other half of the sack exchange, if I had to guess. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me on the podcast today. I appreciate each and every single one of you. This will be the only podcast of the week, as I will be out of the office at the end of the week. But there will be plenty of content coming out of this channel throughout the course of the week. Even when I'm out of the office, I think I'm going to try to leave a couple of videos for you guys to consume until I get back into the office. So be on the lookout for those. But this will be the lone podcast of the week. So look forward to chopping it up with you guys on the other side of my mini vacay. I look forward to having maybe a story or two to tell you on the backside of that thing. But in any event, you guys take care of yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I will see you guys next week. God bless. And as always, good night.
LouieTeeNetwork.
Mm-hmm.